Hello everyone, my name is Anand and I'm making this video on cost of living in Dublin, Ireland. For the first time, I've made few videos before, but this video particularly I'm making it for a lot of people who are coming to Ireland, especially Dublin, as an individual to study here or as a working professional into tech organization, and there are many people who come with a family to live a better quality of life here in Ireland. So just to give a kind of a feel of what could be the cost here in terms of living in Ireland, especially Dublin, so that they would have an estimate of how much financially they would need to be prepared of in terms of living a life in Dublin. So before we proceed, there are some good things that I want to talk about. Ireland, it is one of the most beautiful country I've seen in my life. I've been living in Europe for most part for a considerable time of my life, and I find Ireland to be one of the most beautiful country. There's a lot of greenery. Overall quality of life, especially for family, is very good here. And Dublin is quite a cosmopolitan city where you see all kind of people living and enjoying life in harmony. Uh, of course, there are few areas where Dublin might need to improve upon. Like for example, they have a public transport system here, which is not up to the mark when we compare it to EU. You would see homelessness seen all across the city center, and of course, 1 pint of beer in a famous temple bar in Dublin cost approximately €10. So, with that, we can now move to discuss the cost of living in Dublin. So, I am not going to cover all section of the people. Broadly, I will just cover an individual who has come to Dublin and living a life here. The second section would be a family, primarily two school going children, because the reason why I picked up a family with two school going children is what my family is. I'm living with my family here in Dublin for over 6 years now. So I will be closely able to associate the numbers of the cost to the activities more closer to what I'm doing here in Dublin. So, so let's discuss the factors that will influence the cost of living. These are not the limited factors. Of course, there could be many other costs that may be associated to living in Dublin, but these six factors predominantly take around 90 to 95% of your cost. So we will discuss that. Of course, accommodation, everyone needs it who comes here need an accommodation. We need to discuss about food and grocery. Food could be the outside food, and you need to have grocery because you might need to sometime cook at home and have a right balance of eating outside and cooking at home. Um, when we come to Ireland, of course, as someone coming out from outside Ireland would need to live in an accommodation where you need to share your utilities or you own the utility bills, have to have a mobile phone to talk to people around, and these are the utility costs we will cover as part of point number three. Coming down to travel, people might own their own vehicle or take a public transport, so that's the cost is not pretty cheap here, so that we might end up spending a lot of money on travel as well. Entertainment and shopping are the two different elements where a lot of expenses goes in for an individual or a family who comes in. So we will discuss these six factors as part of the factors that influences the cost of living for an individual or for a family. So we'll start with the bachelors first, and before we start I just want to tell you that this video I'm making it in the year 2025, and these costs are the approximation as I speak. It most likely it is going to go higher up down the line, part of an inflation, but this is where we are at this point of time in the year 2025 quarter one. For a bachelor, accommodation can be of various type. It could be a hostel accommodation, or it could be a shared accommodation. And even within shared accommodation, you tend to share a property with a lot of individuals, bit crowded, compared to you take a good property, and in that property you're sharing with few individuals, and each one of them have their own room with maybe with ensuite kind of an arrangement. So that cost can vary depending upon an individual choice from 600 euro to 1200 euros a month. uh, you cannot find any property in Ireland, a decent property of Ireland, uh, less than 1000 euro, in my opinion. But 600, I'm still giving it because I think there are some hostel accommodation. I know students do like to live in hostels and end up saving a lot of money there. The second is food and grocery. Of course, here I made an assumption that an individual who is coming in Ireland would like have a sense of not going outside and having a food on a daily basis, and there should be a sense of good mix of home cooking and outdoor eating. So 250 to 350 is what that individual would end up spending on food and grocery. Now, utility, it could be like a mobile phone, your energy bills. When I say energy bill, it's like gas and electric. Uh, in a shared accommodation, everything is shared, right? For example, except the mobile, you own a mobile, you take the mobile plan that you want to, but energy bills, TV, and broadband is most likely going to be shared across all the resident in that property. So I've marked it as 40 to 70 euros. 40 would be being the cheapest that you might end up spending on it, but it would be in the range of 40 to 70. Travel, of course, an individual would need to travel here and there. I assume those individuals would not prefer to take the vehicle on their own, because before taking a vehicle you have to go through a driving test, which is not easy to pass here, let me tell you. So people end up, those who have come here for studies and all, they would prefer to basically go for public transport. You need to buy tickets through a leap cards, and you top it up that card, and then you travel. And if he is a working professional, so I've made some average of like you are going 2 or 3 days to office and working, coming back, so commute to office and home would end up basically 60 to 100 euros a month on travel. Now, entertainment and shopping, I'm clubbing it again because it is again an individual choice how much entertainment she wants, or how much social that individual wants to pay, like going to cinema or coffee, or just want to limit the social activities on few weekends in a month. Similarly, shopping is not everyone does every week. So you have a choice of it, but then you can average it out that this month if I'm not doing a shopping, then next month then I can uh, accumulate this month of expenditure to next month and carry it forward on. So the entertainment, it would be somewhere around 120 to 200, and for shopping I've given 50 to 100 euros. There would be many people who would argue that what can you buy for 50 euros? It may not be anything in Ireland, but you may be like, if you want to do a shopping every quarter, then you have 150 euro to spend on shopping, and you buy whatever you want to buy. So that brings us to basically find the monthly average for an individual bachelor living in Dublin. The cost would be somewhere around 1,120 to 20,000, sorry, 2,020 euros a month. It's quite a lot of money for an individual. So we'll discuss about what proportion of your expenses goes where. Let's go to the next section, which is about discussing about the cost of living of a family. Here, if you see the accommodation, it is 1800 to 2500. It's a whopping big number because accommodation in Dublin is very, very, very expensive. It is also being in news that there is an accommodation crisis, which means that there are a lot of people coming in to Ireland, especially Dublin, but there's not enough homes to live. And that's one of the reasons why it is that led to the spike in the renting market. You would not get any decent house less than 1800 in Dublin, which has a good energy rating, which means better energy rating means you will end up spending less on energy bills. If you might get a 1200 a month property in Dublin, but that would have a very poor energy rating, which means you end up a lot on your energy bills. So 1800 to 2500 is what the approximate cost would be for accommodation, food and grocery for a husband, wife, and two children, with a decent mix of home cooking and outdoor eating, pizzas for the children, and might be going once a month to a restaurant, would basically lead you to spend around 500 to 700 euros. Utilities, again, you are living in an apartment or house on your own, so whatever bill comes, you don't share, you pay it on your own. Mobile bills, TV and broadband are generally uh, is a bundle package that you get here in Ireland. And for some of the homes who are living in the separate homes, they end up paying the bins cost as well, which is approximately 20 euro a month. So utility cost would be somewhere around 150 to 170. Travel, again, for a family, it is advisable to have your own vehicle because it gives them uh, the leeway to basically plan. Because you have children, you have to plan it based on how children's how and quickly they are ready to travel. Whereas with public transport, the frequency is not that good in Ireland of public transport, especially the buses, and even that's at the peak time. The frequency of that is after every 15 minutes or so. So the vehicle cost would be your running cost, your fuel cost, your motor tax, insurance, whatnot, and sometimes you might need to travel on public transport too. So that would lead to 120, 150 euros on travel. Entertainment, again, with children, after school activities, you as an individual you go to your office, you meet your colleagues, you might go for a social meeting, and all that sort of thing will end up spending around 100 to 200. Of course, people can argue 100 is more or 200 is less, and so on and so forth. This is a decent number based on what I spend on. Again, shopping, I'm not a person who goes to shopping on a weekly basis, but as the need arises, kind of a situation. But if I look at my 6 month or my 1 year of expenditure, I would say 100 to 200 euro is what I spent on an average every month. So that brings me to the total for a family living in Ireland, to an average of 2,770 to up to 3,920 euros a month. Now, if you look at this number, you would, for a family as well as for a bachelor, you see 600 to 1200 from a total of 1,120 to 2020, and 1,800 for an accommodation, for a total expenditure of 2,770. So it gives you a feel that a large chunk of your expenses goes on accommodation, which I have explained it why, and it won't change it, in my opinion, in coming couple of years, because the housing crisis is there and there's a lot of discussion going on in the government as how to tackle it. There's no direction at the moment and doesn't look like there will be any direction in coming years. So this is going to be the fact, living in Ireland, where a lot of costs would be absorbed by accommodation or renting or living in your own property. And so you might have made a feel of what the cost is. Dublin by no means is a cheap city. Rather, as per one of the survey, it is one of the most expensive city in Europe. So it's so anyone coming to Dublin and thinking that I can complete a course in 2 years in a minimalistic cost, it would not be that easy. It's a very, very expensive city, A lot of exposure you will get it definitely, but you need to come prepared financially. That's pretty much it what I wanted to cover in this session. uh, I have been living in Dublin for over 6 years now. I've been a working professional from last over 20 years now. I worked all across Europe, uh, and I also know what Dublin as a city has to offer for a working professional, who should come and who should not, what Dublin has to offer. Uh, so I'll try to make a separate video on that one. Do let me know if you want it. But if you are happy with this video giving a kind of a ballpark figure of the cost of living in Dublin, do give me your feedback. Of course, I would like to end by a note that all these numbers that I've given is an approximation, so don't just stick to it. Make a plus or minus 10% to the cost that I've given it. So with that, thank you so much for watching and listening to me. We'll connect again on some other topic. Thank you so much.